Hello and welcome to Who's the Bossk? It's a Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I am your host. I am the lead Southern California reporter and editorial director for Star Wars content at Laughing Place. This is episode number 154 of Who's the Bossk, and we will be discussing everything going on down at Disneyland Resort for Star Wars Month, which is running throughout the month of May, and for Star Wars Night, which is the ticketed after-hours event at Disneyland Park proper. And for that conversation, I have invited back on the show my friend and fellow Star Wars fanatic, Nick Tierce. Nick, how are you? Thank you so much for coming back on the show to talk with me about Star Wars.
Bright suns, Mike. Bright suns.
Bright suns to you as well.
Always good to talk to you, whether it's about Star Wars or Disney or, as today, both of those things at the same time.
It's a crossover between my day job and my other day job that are both for the same company. But Nick, I wanted to ask you about something. So two of the times that I have run into you at the park in recent memory, one was on Life Day in November of last year, and one was on Star Wars Night last week. Now tell me if I'm not supposed to talk about this, like a Fight Club type thing.
Not at all. No. Okay. I post about it openly, so you're more than welcome to reveal this.
Yeah, so I have one of them right here. This is the pocket guide to Saja lore that you have created and distribute on your own, self-written, self-published. Tell me, how did this come about? So the other one that you gave me was about Life Day and the holiday special. That's right. So what made you start making these little, would you call it like a zine or
Yeah, it's a little zine in the grand tradition of fandom. This is my own little way of connecting with the way fans used to express their love for the thing that they, were such a huge fan of back in the day. In the early days, pre-internet, zines were the thing. And so rather than me wanting to do some big 8.5 by 11 stapled in the corner thing, I thought, let's just do some little pocket ones, particularly in situations where I'm interested in niche corners of Star Wars that might require some explanation or, debunking some factoids. It started with the Life Day one, the Pocket Guide to Life Day lore, which I update every year as the lore of Life Day expands larger and larger. But, there was just some misconceptions about both Life Day and the holiday special that I thought it'd be nice to get the record straight on some of these things. And so that's how that one started. And then when you do a costume from the Galactic Star Cruiser, not a lot of people have had a chance in the percentage-wise in the fandom. Thousands and thousands of people have done Star Cruiser, but still, it might require some explanation. So I thought within that niche, there's a sub niche of this particular type of character, the Saja, who run the lightsaber training on the Galactic Star Cruiser, and they are descendants of the Guardians of the Whills. And so I thought, there's not a ton of lore about them. Let's collect it all in one place and make it easy for me. And honestly, it's just nicer than me giving out a business card to people when they're like, can I find you online or something? At a fan event, I like to give out these little zines. So who knows what the third in the trilogy will be? Not even I know.
You don't know yet. How do you decide who gets one of these? Now, I feel like I'm among a privileged few who have been handed one of these, but are you, if somebody were to come up to you having seen this or heard you on the podcast and said, can I have one? Would they be welcome to one?
Oh, absolutely.
And you always have them on you?
Well, no, not in just, if it's everyday life, I'm not going to have a pocket full of zines, but at any kind of fan event type thing, like a Star Wars night or like a celebration or a Comic-Con. Comic-Con's coming right around the corner. So if anyone spots me at Comic-Con, I'll make sure I have some zines and some pins on me in that kind of situation. I haven't figured out, to me, it's more of an in-person thing. And so I'll release a digital version after whatever event I create them for. So people can, see like, how is he contextualizing the information in these things if they just want to read it. But, I'm not personally very interested in like mailing out physical versions because, honestly, when you see them, it's a piece of paper. There's nothing incredibly impressive about them physically. It's more of a throwback thing. But so any kind of fun event like that, I'll usually have some on me.
So you said there might be a third in the trilogy coming up and you don't know what the topic will be, but do you have like a time frame in mind? Like, I want this done by the end of the year or next year? Or
it's as necessary. And honestly, if there's no new Life Day lore, there won't be an update to the Life Day one. It's as it is. I still have some left over and whatnot, but it's, it's as, and I might have to correct some information that I've had out there, or I'll phrase something in a way that I'm realizing people are interpreting in a way I didn't anticipate. And so I'll just want to clarify certain things. Like, when I originally said, the big fact is people don't know George Lucas worked on the holiday special. And so I opened it up with this big splashy thing, like George Lucas wrote a 6-page treatment for the holiday special, which is true, but it made people think he was like sitting at a typewriter when he was dictating it
Okay.
verbally, and George Lucas can verbally speak 6 pages very quickly. So,
Sure.
I'll do little kind of revisions like that to make it clear. It's like, these were the two people sitting at the typewriter. George was in the office and just kind of doing the thing he would do. And that was, if you think the holiday special is weird, if they had made the version in George's notes, it would have been even weirder.
Well, I appreciate these, and I'm glad to have them, and I'm looking forward to the third one, whatever that may be. I do want to mention that we are recording this live on Laughing Place YouTube channel, and if you do want to comment, we'll be happy to address your questions or concerns. I want to do some of that right now. Hope, do you know Hope Blamirius? Nick, this person seems to know you.
Perhaps an alias. I'm
Okay.
not familiar with the alias.
Hey, Nick, can you say electro-syntho-magnetic musical sounds on the live stream? Do you know what that means?
I know that it is a reference to the Main Street Electrical Parade.
Okay.
And I don't know that I've ever publicly proclaimed love for the Electrical Parade. I love this, particularly the music. So I'd be happy to say right now, it's not easy to say, is it? That's right. It's one of these things. It's a tongue twister. Okay. Electro-syntho-magnetic musical sounds. There you go.
Right.
Now you can make that your ringtone.
Yeah, that'll be clipped and used somewhere. Alexander Lee says hi, and then Toy Fan says hi to Mike and Nick and chat. Hello to everybody watching and playing along at home. Speaking of playing along, we have something that we do on the show called the 5 Star Wars questions. Nick, this is your second time as a guest on Who's the Bossk. That means you've graduated to level 2 of the 5 Star Wars questions. Are you ready for this?
Oh, I'm ready to level up, man.
Okay, here we go. Level 2 of the 5 Star Wars questions. Number 1, what is your favorite line of dialogue in a Star Wars movie or television show?
I really didn't anticipate this one being the hardest one, but as I was going through the list you gave me, this turned out to be the one that I was like stewing over, because, I really wanted to make sure I answered the question as it was asked, which is to say, you're asking my favorite line of dialogue, not necessarily what I think is the best line of dialogue, because I do think I've heard others on your show mention the line of dialogue that I would agree is the best line of dialogue in Star Wars, which you also note movie or TV show. So we're not talking, theme park experiences. We're not talking comics or video games. We're talking movies and TV shows. So
I should expand it to use any Star Wars media, but by and large, we're going by something you can hear in a movie or TV. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I will say, if it was just in Star Wars, I probably would have answered with something from Star Cruiser. However, answering in the spirit of what the other guests have said, I will agree with previous guests. I think the best line of dialogue in Star Wars is Yoda's speech to Luke in The Last Jedi. I think that is, when you're talking about a quote, because again, a line of dialogue is not an exchange of dialogue, because a scene has an exchange of dialogue. That's one type of writing. Whereas a line of dialogue is like, you want this nugget, right? Yes. You want this nugget that you can extract.
Something you can put on a coffee mug.
Yeah, exactly. And so because the Yoda line from Last Jedi, the greatest teacher failure is, and all the words flanking that sentence, I'm not going to go with that one because it's been well covered. So I'm going to go with one that actually represents something that started in film, The Phantom Menace in particular. And then because I'm a big cross-media, non-hierarchical storytelling guy, I like all my ancillary medias. Yeah. I'm going to go with one that took on a new recontextualized meaning in the books, but started out very simply. You might not even think that's even a line worth saying. So my favorite line, I'll say it right now, is from The Phantom Menace. It's when the handmaidens and Padme are making a big decision and the danger has been brought up. And Padme says to her decoy, who's as the Queen Sabe, "We are brave, Your Highness." And it is a simple line. So we are brave, Your Highness. But in E.K. Johnston's Padme books, that line was mythologized in an extremely intimate and personal way. That is a signal between the handmaidens and the decoy and the queen, and it kind of becomes a mantra that they take upon themselves. And so, as a big fan of the whole mythology around Naboo, I think that "We Are Brave, Your Highness" has to be my personal favorite, if not the best, line of dialogue in Star Wars.
Yeah, boy, E.K. Johnston did a really wonderful job in fleshing out those characters who were by and large pretty much background characters
Yeah.
in the movies, and we got to know them so well in those books, and then in the comics recently too with the Darth Vader stuff. Now Sabe would have been Keira Knightley, is that right?
Yes, yes, and you
Okay,
never know. I mean, the stuff that they're doing with Kira in the comics, it
right.
could. I'm seeing if she wanted to come back into the fold, I think there's more than enough material to tell plenty of stories and something like a TV series with Sabe.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I would like to see that. Hopefully, we'll get the return of Keira Knightley to Star Wars at some point. Number two, which Star Wars planet would you like to live on, and why? I think I have a guess for what yours might be, but we'll see.
Again, in the vein of the previous, Naboo has been well covered on this show. It
Yes.
does seem like a paradise. I mean, I have the royal crest of Naboo tattooed on my forearm. It's a foregone conclusion that I would say Naboo. So I'm actually going to go with my official answer will be a different planet because I
Okay.
haven't heard it represented, and it kind of dovetails into the other aspects we've been discussing, like the holiday special. I'm going to go with Kashyyyk.
Okay. I
I'm
don't
going to
think
go
anyone
with
has said Kashyyyk before,
I'm going to
so
go
that's
with Kashyyyk, or as it was called in the holiday special, Kazook.
because right. Was it Ed Norton? What's his name? Art Carney that says Kazook.
It's an unnamed Imperial general on the
Okay.
HoloNet screen, that
Okay.
they're doing a broadcast. But the reason I say is not only is it beautiful, it has that natural wonder.
Yeah.
There's something in the expanded lore, not just of Life Day, but of the Wookiees and of Kashyyyk from the very beginning. Like back, we're talking the NPR audio dramas for the original film. The idea of the Wookiees as creatures of the Force was a early idea, and I think that their connection with nature is an expression of the Force, a non-traditional, non-Jedi expression of the Force. And so I think while the lower levels of Kashyyyk may be perilous and the upper levels may be beautiful and exciting, I personally wouldn't mind living in a nice 360 treehouse. I used to draw little tree houses on my notepads in school, so I think that Kashyyyk is just a perfect answer for this one.
I think it's a great choice. And when I think of Kashyyyk, I always think of Knights of the Old Republic, which
Mm.
now correct me if I'm wrong, but outside of the holiday special, that would have been the first time that we really spent a lot of time there, right? Uh, in the
Other than
EU.
Sure, I mean, there were like kids' books and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of a real expansive kind of thing, maybe that I don't know the timeline on the games as well. Was Knights of the Old Republic before Galaxies?
Yeah, yes. So
Okay,
Knights of the
okay.
Old Republic would have been around, I think, 2002 or 3. When did Galaxies come out? Do you know offhand?
Oh, I don't. I missed the boat on that. It might have
Yeah,
been. It was in the boom of the MMOs, so it was the aughts. I
yeah.
mean, I don't know the
Okay.
exact date on
I'm
that,
not
but yeah,
sure either, but yeah, that I loved hanging out on Kashyyyk in that game and
yeah,
just getting to meet all the different creatures that live there, and spending time with the Wookiees, as you said, among
yeah.
the trees. It's very nice. Number three in the 5 Star Wars questions level 2. What is your favorite era in the Star Wars storytelling timeline and why? So the examples I list for this one are the Old Republic, which is thousands of years before the original trilogy. Then you've got the High Republic, which is just a few hundred years, or a couple hundred years before
Right.
the original trilogy. You've got the prequel era that we've talked about already. The reign of the Empire is between the prequels and the OT. Age of Rebellion would be the original trilogy. The New Republic is the current, the Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, that era between the original trilogy and the sequels. Then you've got the sequel era. And last time you were on the show, we talked about the Rise of Skywalker, so that would qualify as that point. And then I also want to include Legends, the
Yeah.
old expanded universe timeline that was kind of decanonized when Disney bought Lucasfilm. So, which of these would you consider your favorite, Nick?
Tempted as I am to be stubborn and simply say the Rise of the First Order because that's when Galaxy's Edge and Star Cruiser take place, I'm not going to
Yeah.
do that. That would be pandering to my own self. So I'm going to say my favorite is the Fall of the Jedi, that prequel era.
Okay.
The sort of the potential of the storytelling in there to me has a real wide bandwidth. of the type of stories that you can tell. And I think we're seeing that play out in kind of how that inspired what the High Republic has become, and just the breadth of types of stories you can tell. When you're under Imperial reign, there's always this kind of specter of a particular type of story that you're going to expect. And not that I don't like that type of story, but the sort of emotional variety that came with the prequel era and all of the tie-in stuff was it's something that resonates with me to this day. So I gotta go with Fall of the Jedi.
Well, I hadn't thought about that before. So not only is there a freedom to that period being free of imperial, like, despotic rule, but there's also a freedom in the storytelling where the stories don't necessarily have to be rebels versus empire. They can open up the universe and explore other aspects. I hadn't really considered that, but yeah, that's a good point. Number 4, which Star Wars creature would you like to have as a pet?
That we're gonna go with we're gonna pitch it right down the center here.
Okay.
We're gonna go with a new addition. Gotta be the Theory that just showed up at Batu. This cute little thing that becomes a very cute, large, big thing that's too big to live in Black Spire Outpost and must roam and graze among the Surabut River Valley. So I'll spell that for our listeners who've never heard this before. THERII, named by Amy Ratcliffe in her wonderful children's book, Ellie and Me, a Target exclusive that's no longer in print. I wish I could recommend it, but I do recommend it. It's a great book, but you'll have to buy a used version if you'd like to acquire it.
It is somewhere on the bookshelf behind me. I won't go digging through it right now to find it. But so for people who don't know, now the Theory was intended to be the creature that you were going to be riding on in that third unbuilt attraction at Galaxy's Edge. Is that correct?
Right. It would have been this fantastic third attraction that was sort of like a people mover in the sense that it would have an elevated platform that would go all around the land. So you would ride on the back of this beast with, 6 of your closest friends, and you would sort of bob around, and it would give you this sort of bird's eye view of the outpost, which you would have loaded in over by, kind of the walkway where the TIE fighter is now.
Yeah.
Between the sort of restrooms and that, you would have gone up and over, and the loading would have been behind what would have been the restrooms now. And you would have just gone up on this beast creature and walked around the land, which would have just been, obviously amazing.
And the reasons that I've heard, I think Doug Chiang has said that the reason that didn't get built was it was had too low of a capacity. Is that accurate to your understanding?
I would never attempt to disagree with Lord Doug Chiang. However, I will say, in my experience, they would have known the capacity restrictions on this before it got to the phase we knew it got to, which was it was fully blueprinted out. Like there was a version of the layout of the land that included this ride, and I'm sure that was a legitimate concern. But I would say the bigger reason is probably what we all know as the extreme money suck that became Rise of the Resistance. Now, they've never officially spoken about the timeline of cancellation, so I am speculating on this. I don't know the exact answer, but one way or another.
There's a clip out there, like people have seen the clip of the testing of the animatronic creature that's been shown at D23 Expo and stuff. Do you think there's a chance this could ever be implemented still, or is that just completely off the table?
Only in the sense that anything is possible. I mean, literally anything could happen. I would say the odds of it happening are very near to zero.
Okay.
If I'm just being realistic, I don't think there will ever be any financial moment where it's opportune for them to build this attraction. I think that
was it the $17 billion or whatever that they're not going to put into Walt Disney World. They can bring it here and put it to the Galaxy's Edge.
Right. I think that there is a general thing that was the vision of what the land would have been. And then, every plan has compromises. That's normal. Like, there's no criticism here. I love what Galaxy's Edge was, even if in its incomplete sort of state. But, if I was going to believe that they were going to ever open that ride, I would have to look for clues that they were trying to incrementally achieve that previous vision. And sadly, every new addition that we get to Galaxy's Edge is more of an indication that they're moving incrementally away from that. So anything's possible. I would be the first in line if it happened, obviously, but I like to set expectations. I don't see it happening.
Fair enough. Number 5, the 5th and final of the 5 Star Wars questions, level 2. This is a good one. I like this one. Let's say you're Kathleen Kennedy, you're president of Lucasfilm, and you can bring in any creative person to create their own Star Wars story. So what filmmaker or author would you call into your office and have them pitch their own ideas for Star Wars?
Much like how I would never argue with Doug Chang. I would never argue with Kathy Kennedy. And so if you had asked me a couple months ago, my answer, in all honesty, would have been Damon Lindelof. So I would say that because of the course of time, maybe he will get back in line to get back in that club, as he said before. But, I think it's safe to say that, maybe that's not the one that I should utilize as this
Okay.
particular answer, because there are, look, this is a dream answer. I can answer whoever I want. I'm not going to answer
Yes.
a recent, sort of tabloid one. So I would say that because your previous guest, our dear friend Drew, answered, the correct answer is Gore Verbinski.
Okay.
There is no question. Like, that is the right answer to this question, because if Gore Verbinski made a Star Wars, he might even get the team back together from Pirates and have Ted and Terry write it. And I think Ted and Terry should write Star Wars. But because Drew already answered it, here's my answer. Because it will never, ever, ever happen, I would like to see what a Wachowski Star Wars movie would look like.
That's a good one. I don't know if we've had that one before, but I feel like there's a lot of Star Wars in the Matrix. I mean, certainly drawing from the same like hero's journey, like blueprint, where you could draw some parallels there. But what is it about the
there's a
Wachowskis?
lot of Star Wars prequels in the Matrix sequels. Like, there's just a
Right.
lot of shared DNA of people who are ambitious and are willing to say start from a mythological blueprint and then very quickly transcend it and try and invent a new type of storytelling, which was obviously in both cases very challenging to people, because I think there is an innate desire to have the comfort blanket of those structures, and when you break outside of those, it's either going to work for people or it's not. And I think that willingness to try something new is the reason I would love to have a Wachowski Star Wars.
How did you feel about the Matrix Resurrection?
I really like Matrix 4. Now, that being said, if this is my dream scenario, this would represent the reuniting of the two Wachowskis, because during the final season, but right before the final season of Sense8, they kind of broke up and didn't work together anymore.
Okay.
They don't work together anymore. And so I would love to see a Star Wars that reunited the Wachowskis. That being said, I really, really liked Matrix 4, but there was a sense of, now that we've seen what a Matrix looked like without Lily, you really get a sense of what Lily brought to the table. And so, I think if you were doing a Star Wars, that sensibility would be very welcome.
I like it. I like that choice quite a bit. Now, I actually kind of want to follow up a little bit on the Lindelof thing, because I'm also disappointed that kind of fell apart. But I'm having trouble putting my own finger on it as a fan of Damon Lindelof's writing. But what do you think it is about him that would have delivered a Star Wars movie that would have been up both of our alleys?
But right, the first thing for me is a reverence for the source of all this. And I think that when you look at what he did with Watchmen, there was not just an aesthetic attempt to replicate what had come before. There was a deep spiritual examination of what did that comic book series mean to comics at the time, formally and mythologically, thematically. What was that thing trying to do? So let's not try and replicate that. Let's take that energy and say, how could you do that for television? What would and so that's why I think if you're willing to let go of kind of this fundamentalist look at this thing you love, you're asking what it's really doing. Like, what energies is it actually indulging in artistically? And I think he just nailed it with Watchmen. And I think that, I mean, obviously it's one thing to say, I love all of the original stories that Damon has concocted over here. I'm Tomorrowland fan #1. I love The Leftovers, Lost. I'm a big fan still. But, Star Wars represents more than just creating something new. You always have to tell a new story. That's just, to me, that's the barrier to entry. But it's, how do you tell an original story within something that has existed for so long? And just the very sophisticated way that he did that in Watchmen, I think, would be wonderful to see brought over to Star Wars, because it would be sensitively done. Even if you didn't agree with the decisions, there would be thoughtful decisions, and that's something that I really locked onto with The Last Jedi. Was, I thought, even if those decisions upset people, they were so sensitively done and they were so consciously done that if you dig, you will excavate meaning. And that's, to me, the thing with Damon is, I want to dig and excavate meaning, and never have I been wrong in putting more effort into understanding some of his stuff. So that's kind of the reason for me, Star Wars and him. It feels like it's inevitable. Like at some point, that's why I didn't want to waste my answer on it. He will do a Star Wars. I just don't know when it's going to be or what it is.
Yeah, I certainly hope that comes to be. All right, that's going to bring us to the end of the 5 Star Wars questions for this week. And let's talk about some Star Wars headlines. A couple of pieces here about Andor. Actually, it won a Peabody Award this past week. What's your understanding of the Peabody Awards, Nick? Do you know much about this?
Well, they are a prestigious award, and particularly in regard to the topic that we have today, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Andor won one of the more traditional Peabodys, but they have in recent years introduced interactive and new media Peabodys. Okay. And so it is an expanding category, and I'm really looking forward to how it grows to appreciate some of the more liminal media experiences that we love. So I'm glad Star Wars won one. I do understand that a Star Wars fan project had won a Peabody some years ago, but this is the first official Lucasfilm production that had won a Peabody. Yeah,
great. So congratulations to the team over there. And speaking of Andor, we got news this week that Tony Gilroy, who is the showrunner of Star Wars Andor, he was also instrumental in the rewrites and reshooting of Rogue One, a Star Wars story. He has stepped away from season 2 of Andor as the WGA Writers Guild strike continues. So he obviously the scripts were finished, is my understanding. He finished writing the show before the strike began, but then there was some pressure on him to step away from his other duties as producer and showrunner in accordance with, I guess, the wishes of the WGA. Do you have any thoughts on this, Nick?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a great learning opportunity that I don't, personally, I would not have blamed him if he had not been willing to make a stand, but I'm glad to see that he did. I don't necessarily personally consider myself the hugest fan of his work. However, I think this is an extremely admirable stance to have taken, and I'm so proud that he has taken it, because we need to break down the barriers and sort of educate people on what writers actually do. I think there's a lot of confusion. When people hate something, they blame the writers. When they love something, they give the credit to everyone but the writer. So the idea that a writer's duties on any project, forget movies and TV, any project, that they stop with the first draft or the draft of the physical document that people are using, I think is a very outdated concept. And I'm glad that his doing this is bringing attention to the fact that, look, you might think on paper that I can dissociate my producing duties from my writing duties. Those decisions are one and the same. They're too entangled to be able to disentangle. And so I'm glad that he's done this. And as an infantile reaction, I will say my first reaction to the news was, how funny would it be if Disney got Gareth Edwards to finish showrunning Andor season 2?
That would be the ultimate irony. I think Jordy, my friend Jordy, you know Jordy? He's a theme park guy. He talked to Gareth Edwards, he told me, at some event recently, and asked him if he ever wanted to work on Star Wars again. And I think, to quote, this was the exact quote that he gave me. Gareth Edwards said, "I'm good." So I guess he, I don't know what that experience was like for him, but he said,
it's hard to get taken off your own movie.
Yeah. He also said that he is watching and enjoying Andor, so take that for what you will.
I mean, it's a nuanced thing, right? I think that particularly, when I look back on all of the sort of, we get whiff of this behind the scenes drama every once in a while, and truly we won't know the truth for 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to knowing the truth.
Right.
But it was one thing where it was like, look, they handled Rogue One in the way things are handled. It was done quietly. It was just, they didn't make a big scene of it. They let Gareth finish his part, and then they brought in and did reshoots quietly with Tony. That's how you're supposed to do it. That's why that precedent was so staggeringly broken with Solo. And so I think that it's great that I would not expect anytime soon a Lord and Miller Star Wars, as much as I would love to, because look, I don't know the details. There's a lot of rumors about that drama. I don't really buy into any of them, My only thing is, look, I love everyone working at Lucasfilm, but if your vision doesn't fit with Lord and Miller's vision, you're wrong.
Right. They have a pretty good track record. It's hard to argue with their track record.
No, and just from a writing level, I've
Yeah.
talked to producers that have worked with them. Particularly, there's a legendary producer in Hollywood, and forgive me if I've told this story before, but there's a producer called Lindsay Duran who has worked with them, and the stories she tells about working with them as writers, they know structure, they know myth, they know character. So the idea that the disagreement here was about improv, I don't buy it for one hot second.
Right.
Yeah, that's I can't believe that.
Yeah, like you said, we probably won't know the truth for a while, but I am very curious to know more about that as well. Speaking of behind the scenes stuff coming out, the Russo brothers, who have directed a number of movies for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Marvel Studios, they have said, I think in an interview last week, that they were approached by Kevin Feige to direct his movie back when he was planning to produce a Star Wars movie, which has been disputed by Kathleen Kennedy, who said that there never really was I don't know, she never saw a pitch from him or anything.
Right.
But I don't know. What do you think about this is another thing where I'm like, not sure what to believe. And I don't know, what do you think? What's your take on the current state of the future of Star Wars theatrical, Nick?
Well, it's interesting, man. I mean, I think they're in a precarious situation, and I think that how do you do the next theatrical Star Wars after a saga film when you say we're not really doing saga films anymore? What's the next one out the gate? You know, I think that's the only thing that was really surprising to me when they announced the 3 movies was the order, which was the idea that Sharym Obaid-Chinoy is first is fascinating to me. And I think it's simply because we might be in a situation where even though Lindelof and his writer were taken off the project, there may have been enough juice in there to say we're going to send Stephen Knight off with a head start rather than starting from scratch. Right. Because everything that we were hearing sort of under the table was that movie was ready to go. Like they were ready to start shooting it around the corner in a period of months is what they were saying. But I think there was a momentum there they're trying to capitalize on. And obviously they say bringing Daisy Ridley back is a huge thing. My theory was always that it was going to be a Mando movie. I thought if you want a guaranteed hit, get that baby up on that screen, right, and everyone will go. Right. But eventually we will get the Mando movie. That's not. It's just an interesting slate. I'm a little personally, just as a fan, nervous about the Mangold movie. I think that from a Star Wars fan perspective, I'm sure he can come up with a gripping yarn. But from an interconnectedness perspective, I'm of the ilk that says maybe we just don't tell any stories that far back. I think that the lore, you get into problems when you start doing math that big, and I think the temptations to include things that are part of the DNA of Star Wars that just mathematically would be extremely difficult to believe existed 25,000 years ago. Will be too large, and we will have to write new fictions in our fandom to connect those things. That's the concern. Obviously, maybe that's not the case. But
now they tackled this in the EU, though. They had the Dawn of the Jedi. There were comics and books. Did you read? And what were your thoughts on that? Did you ever tackle any of those?
I never jumped into that. I think that sometimes the storied past, in my opinion, needs to remain the storied past. That being said, it could be magnificent, and I could be completely convinced. I'm just saying that in my mind, this is treacherous territory, and it has to be done very sensitively. And maybe he will. He's a very good filmmaker. I'm not too worried about it. But
speaking, not to interrupt you there again, Nick, but I just want to throw in this comment here since we're talking about James Mangold. Kevin Davis in the comments here has predicted domestic box office debut prediction for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny from 190 to 200 million. What do you think? This is going to be a big hit? Indy 5?
I will say that I think Indy 5 is going to exceed expectations simply based on the anecdotal evidence of my elder family members are texting me about it.
Okay.
I think that it is going to bring the World War IIs back out to the cinema. The greatest generation will return.
Coming out to watch Indy 5. And then Hope has corrected us on the pronunciation of her last name, Blay Myers. Thank you, Hope. And then she also points out that it is considered the chat and not the comments. So thank you for that. And then continue, Nick. I'm sorry, I derailed everything. You were talking about the future of Star Wars in movie theaters.
Oh, sure, sure. So, I mean, I'm certainly looking forward to whatever the next story is. And I believe firmly in not having opinions too early. It's like either the movie's going to be good or not. Wait until it's here, give it a fair shake. It's a totally new thing, and just judge it on its own merits. Like I don't want to prognosticate on what's going to be good and what's not. I'm just reacting to, based on the one sentence pitches that we've got. You've got two, in my mind, fairly safe concepts, and one that just, for me, it's like every corner there's peril. Like there's just especially in terms of how we've started to bring up the artifacts of ancient Jedi in modern canon, and sort of the proto saber mentality and sort of what that development was. And there's nothing to say how long that timeline was, but you can imagine a filmmaker coming in and wanting to have very traditional looking lightsabers and very traditional looking droids, and we'll see. I don't know. I could be completely off base here. It's just, that's the one where it's like, man, okay, this story is going to have to be real compelling, and I hope that we're clocking in at many different types of Star Wars movies. Yeah. The engines need to start back up. I'm not as pessimistic. I think all three of these movies will happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, when I heard the James Mangold thing, it just immediately brought me back to the months leading up to The Last Jedi coming out, and the announcement of Rian Johnson's trilogy. And I was like, oh, this is a big, vote of confidence in Rian Johnson. And then that never really panned out yet.
Well, for that one, I take Kathy Kennedy at her word. I really do think it's just the thing of Rian Johnson has so many irons in the fire. I do believe he will come back to Star Wars. Okay. And I think that simply because, you hear about behind the scenes drama, but you also hear about behind the scenes bliss. Yeah. The developmental path and production of Last Jedi were the smoothest of any of the modern projects. Right.
It's the only one without many major speed bumps along the way. Right. So yeah, I guess this James Mangold thing may not, my thought was, oh, it's just a marketing thing. Like, okay, they want to,
right. And I'll caveat this. Yeah. If Indy 5 tanks, it won't happen.
Okay.
But that being said, I just think it's so very near impossible for Indy 5 to tank.
Yeah, me too. I'm hoping for big things from that. On Disney Plus. Oh, that's loud. Oh, there's some drilling going on across the way.
Thankfully, so I will tell you, the StreamYard is doing a good job of canceling it out.
It might be my microphone too. My microphone is very nice and being directional. So let's see. Did you watch this Disney Plus short, Maggie Simpson and Rogue Not Quite One? To shift gears here, this is a funny short with.
I did not. I have about 30 seasons to catch up on Simpsons before I watch that one.
Okay. I'm kidding. Well, this is a Star Wars themed short. It's like 3 minutes long. You can watch that on Disney Plus. I thought it was funny. This is the second Star Wars one that they've done. Actually, the previous one was called The Force Awakens from Its Nap, and it features Maggie Simpson, so you can go check that out on Disney Plus. Oh, this is what I really want to talk to you about, this next bullet point here. A ton of Star Wars soundtracks were released on streaming services within the last most of them were on May the 4th, actually. So we got Young Jedi Adventures. I think that was just the main title theme, but Visions Volume 2, DJ Rex Volume 2, the Galactic Star Cruiser soundtrack, all the Gaia songs and more stuff on there, Jedi Survivor, and then Jedi Survivor had a companion album that was called Sounds from the Skylanes. When I mentioned that on the show last week, I thought it was just going to be like soundscapes, like, oh, these are like this is what it sounds like if you're hanging out on the planet Kobo or whatever, and you hear like the birds chirping in the background or whatever. But this is actually more in-universe music from the cantina in Jedi Survivor, from Grease's what does they call it? A saloon in the video game. So my question for you, Nick, have you listened to this stuff? And then what do you I know you're a big lore person, so what do you think of just having this wealth of not only soundtrack stuff, but in-universe music? I feel like we have hours and hours of this now from all these different playlists that have been released. This must be thrilling for you as it is for me.
You're not wrong, man. I mean, our cup of diegetic music is overflowing right now. I mean, it's amazing to think how few we had, in the original trilogy days. And there was not really a ton of diegetic music out of the Clone Wars era. There was a little bit. But man, they are leaning into it, and I am here for it. It's like I haven't even played the new Jedi Survivor game, but the fact that there's a whole in-universe diegetic soundtrack with
Yeah.
just fantastic. I mean, and the Gaia one, it's half Gaia music and the other half is all the songs from the Sublight Lounge,
Right.
which is just amazing. I mean, they're really we're spoiled when it comes to the diegetic music. So I hope it continues. And honestly, I just started watching the show, the Young Jedi Adventures show.
Mhm.
There's diegetic music up in that show too. So it's like hopefully they include some of those when the full soundtrack comes out. But it's like, man, I feel like they've really reached a rhythm with this stuff where they know what to do with it now. And I just love that kind of for every project, you know, Bad Batch included, we've gotten some great, just wonderful, some bangers. Let's be honest, they're bangers.
Bangers. Absolutely. Yeah, I was jamming out to this stuff in my car because last week I had to drive down to Disneyland 4 times in 5 business days, and yeah, just the Gaia stuff alone is just wonderful. As you knew already, but
It's
just to
so
have
well
the
done.
studio recordings that are really well produced.
So well produced. That was what was
Yeah.
shocking to me, is it's not just like, okay, let's bring in some, you know, they really took, because I believe it's Judith Hill who wrote all the songs with Imagineering for
Okay.
the, you know, original kind of Gaia song, that Ula Shuka that we got, and then she performed it live. If I'm not mistaken, I believe she is the voice of Gaia on these ones, but the production is just so polished. Like, these sound like real songs, and they're great. I'm just so pleased to finally have it. I mean, let's be fair, it took long enough. But I'm glad that they you know, obviously they were saving it for May the 4th. These have been done for quite a while. They were recorded a long time ago. But the to finally have it in hand, and for them to have announced, or Trowbridge announced at Celebration, that for the Gaia album they're doing a vinyl version.
I know.
Fantastic. To go right alongside the they did one for the main John Williams suite. They did a picture disc for the Galaxy's Edge Symphonic Suite.
Yeah, I've got that. Got that, came out at D23 Expo, I think, a couple years ago, and I picked that up. So I have to ask you, since you tweeted it out there, who sent you these? There's like bootleg vinyls of the DJ Rex playlist that you got in the mail. I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous.
The investigation is ongoing.
Okay.
But needless to say, what I believe is that it would appear that somebody used one of the available print-on-demand services. There are, I have learned through research, several competing companies that will do very low run to down to one sort of lathe cut vinyl, and I believe that is what this must be. So yeah, a couple of the DJ Rex albums, which, to be fair, they have not announced any physical editions for those at all. They haven't even hinted at it. I think the desire is clearly there, but so yeah, clearly some rogue scoundrel out there decided to take it upon themselves and cut a vinyl and thought I should have a couple.
Boy, and if the person who made those for Nick and sent them out is listening to this and you know, knows me or is just becoming aware of me, I'm a big Galaxy's Edge fan too. I will definitely buy them. Yeah, if they ever come out. But yeah, would love to have the vinyl edition of the DJ.
Now you got to be careful, Mike. These are illegal bootlegs.
Yeah. Okay.
You got to watch out. The mouse. You're gonna have a little laser dot coming down on you in a second.
Right. That's the construction worker next door is probably from Disney in incognito. Anyway, let's move on to the next item here. New comic books. Oh, last week there were 7. This week there were only 2. So a slow week for Star Wars comic books. The High Republic number 9, Darth Vader number 34. I've read both of these. I reviewed them on laughingplace.com. Nick, I've run into you at our local comic shop, which is called House of Secrets here in Burbank, California. Have you been keeping up with Star Wars comics lately?
I'm big. I mean, as no one will be surprised based on my answers to your 5 questions, the current Sabe storyline, which I know has been testing you a little bit with your patience. The thing is, while you're starving over there, I'm eating good over here. Like, you know, I just love where they're taking it. And, you know, Sabe made a big sort of decision this week, and I was sort of thrilled with the depiction of that, and kind of curious for the future. She was given an ambiguous ending there. So
that's very true. She was given the tech ending from Bad Batch season 2. Kind of that's what happened to Sabe in this new issue of Darth Vader. So I'm curious to see if she'll ever come back. And High Republic I thought was great too. Kevin Scott doing a real good job. Although the ending of that comic was spoiled for me by reading the
Oh
novel
no!
Path of Vengeance. So they
Ah,
kind of messed up the release order there a
right.
little bit,
It's
but
hard. I mean,
yeah,
comics, the scheduling is so hard, and it's so many things have been getting delayed for various reasons.
yeah.
It's hard. I mean, I admire the gumption of it and the ambition of tying them together, but that is the risk. Is that the book will come out first, and there you go. The comic has been rendered a prequel when it was supposed to be
Yeah,
the initial,
that's
the
fair.
initial
It's still
thing.
great. It was still edge of my seat reading. Really recommend going out and picking those up. Lastly, in Star Wars headlines for this week, I was sent a headset. So this is the Logitech Mandalorian Special Edition gaming headset that I reviewed on laughingplace.com. Really, really nice. I'm not an audiophile, so I have never bought a really nice pair of headphones for myself. Usually it's the white
Right.
iPhone one. So this is, I said immediately this was the nicest pair of headphones or headset I've ever owned. It is intended for gaming, but I'm not an MMO guy. I don't play online shooters or anything like that. I prefer the single player video games like Jedi Survivor and Legend of Zelda's coming out tonight. I'm going to go grab that. But if you are a gamer, or even if you're not and you just want to use this to listen to music, which I did, I really recommend these Mandalorian. It's a headset. I keep saying headphones, but I think, does that make me sound old? Is headphones like an outdated term? People call it that anymore, or I don't know. Anyway, this is a gaming headset from Logitech. You should go and check out my review, and you can order it. It's available now from Amazon. They're really nice. They've got the Mandalorian. It's the Mudhorn in signet on the side, and then the other side is a silhouette of Mando holding the dark saber. So very, very cool gaming headset from Logitech. Okay, that's the end of Star Wars headlines. Oh, I wanted to acknowledge some comments here. So our friends over at Heroes of the Halcyon are watching. Gaia album equals obsessed with two hearts. Yeah, I love it. I've been listening to it in the car. And then let's see. Hope wanted me to tell Nick about Fantasmic's anniversary.
All right, Mike, tell me about it.
Fantasmic's anniversary is coming up. Boy, I wish I knew more. Here we go. Anniversary is on Saturday. And don't forget to say Blay Myers. There you go. Hope Blay Myers. Thank you, Hope.
Now, wait a minute. Is she trying to have us summon her like Beetlejuice by saying her name 3 times? Yeah. I'm on to you, Hope.
Okay, let's get into our. We've wasted enough time with me blathering on here. Let's get into our main topic for this week, which is Star Wars month at Disneyland and Star Wars night also at Disneyland. Nick, I want to start this off by asking you. I got to know you through Star Wars at Disneyland. We met by standing next to each other in Oga's Cantina. What more appropriate place could we have met each other?
It was a meet cute if there
it was a meet cute. So I know you're a big Star Wars guy. I know you're a big Disneyland guy. What have been some of your highlights from Disney Parks history of collaborating with Lucasfilm and the Star Wars franchise?
Let's go all the way back. No,
okay.
I'm kidding. No. I mean, it's hard not to answer Star Cruiser. I mean, it's the pinnacle. It's the crown jewel. It's the thing we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
But before that, I will say that it was so fun, and I'll say this just because I miss it. I wish Launch Bay would come back. It was a quaint thing. It was an improvised use of the old intervention space. But having somewhere for folks to get their photos with the characters, the roaming characters in Galaxy's Edge are fantastic for the immersive participant, for someone who's really, steeping themselves in the interactive aspects of the land. But for people who just want a photo with Baby Yoda and Grogu, they would be much better served by a line that they know, if I get in this line, I'm going to get my picture with Mando and Baby Yoda. So, I miss that, and I miss the design of it. I miss the fun of having a dedicated Star Wars space that was non-immersive, because I think as much as the immersive is the future and we just love that type of storytelling, it doesn't mean it has to be the only type of storytelling. And I would love to preserve Galaxy's Edge as that immersive in-universe experience, but have that kind of festival mentality outside of that, particularly in an area that's sitting empty and not being used for anything.
Right. What do you think the future actually does hold for the Launch Bay? Do you foresee it coming back?
I I'm so petrified that the most likely future is demolishment
Yeah.
completely. You know,
Well,
I
that was
think
the rumor a
yeah.
while ago. No, I don't know. I just have no idea
There's
myself.
there's that great, I don't know if it was from the Imagineering documentary on
Yeah.
Disney Plus, but there's that great video clip, B-roll of Joe Rohde like looking at a model of
Yeah.
Tomorrowland and picking that building up and like looking from that perspective, and I'm like, oh man, that's not a good sign.
Yeah. Like that's,
As with
but
anything,
but
you
now
know,
Joe Rody got canned, so or retired. I'm sorry.
now let's be honest here. He, like Tony Baxter before him, was gently forced into retirement.
Right, right, right. Yeah, who knows? I am very curious to see what happens with that launch bay innovations. Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah,
America
yeah,
Sings, Carousel of Progress building that's
yeah.
been there in Tomorrowland for a long, long time. And who knows? Maybe it will become launch bay again. Uh, I've gone in there recently. I feel like for some events they have like the queue winding through the launch bay, and it's weird. Like they still have the Last Jedi display, and the it's like, oh, this hasn't been updated in 5-6 years. You know, it's still
Right.
got uh very outdated displays in there. But who knows? We'll see. So let's talk about Star Wars month. First of all, why is this Star Wars month? Is it just because it's May the 4th and you've also got the anniversary of the original release? That's why we consider this Star
Right.
Wars month, to your
They have
understanding?
because they have appointed May 4 Star Wars Day, which I just
Yeah.
got to be honest, still does not sit well with
No,
me.
no good with
I
you.
don't
Okay.
like I like puns. I don't like that pun. I think that it makes sense though, because you know you got that Star Wars Day and then you got Orthodox Star Wars Day, which is May 25th. So you know that look, if they're doing too many offerings for someone to
Yeah.
realistically enjoy in one day, I'd say it's a great excuse to spread it out over a month if that's how they want
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah, me too. I like it as well. So outside of Star Wars Night, which we're going to get into in a little bit, there is this kind of broader Star Wars month celebration going on, and part of that, kind of the centerpiece of that, I think, is Hyperspace Mountain
Mm.
coming back, and that's this overlay of Space Mountain in Tomorrowland, where you kind of can pretend like you're flying in an X-wing and battling against TIE fighters in that environment. Do you like this overlay of Space Mountain, Nick? Are you a fan of Hyperspace Mountain?
I think the overlay was cleverly done. There's a particular moment that always sticks in my head as they used the space well, which is there's a point at which you dip down and there is a wall in front of you, which during regular Space Mountain you don't see, onto which for this version they have projected a TIE fighter coming right at you.
Yeah.
And it's a visceral moment, and I think they did a good job with it. That being said, I am not a great fan of roller coasters, and I am not a great fan of Space Mountain in general.
Okay.
So it's definitely not an offering for me, but you know, hey, for folks that miss it and love it, I'm so glad
Yeah.
it's there. It gets them out of the park so I can enjoy the open walkways.
Now, my wife is annoyed by this because they do bring back Hyperspace Mountain every once in a while. And to answer Hope's question from the chat, not the comments, what year did the Star Wars launch bay open? That was 2015, in advance of The Force Awakens coming to theaters. They did this thing called Season of the Force at Disneyland that included the opening of Star Wars launch bay. It also included, I believe, for the first time, Hyperspace Mountain. Where was I going with that?
Well,
Oh,
it is
right,
the original Star Wars month was called Season of the Force, and I
right,
just got
right,
to
right.
say, in terms of names, they've really stopped trying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, Tori, my wife, is annoyed that they bring back Hyperspace Mountain every once in a while, but they don't bring back Space Mountain Ghost Galaxy anymore for the Halloween season, which is her favorite layover
Sadly, what I think that
overlay.
is I
Yeah.
think sadly the PS1 that was driving the graphics died, and they haven't been able to find another PS1. I think that's what happened to Ghost Galaxy. It's a shame there's just none left.
Bummer, bummer. Maybe we can find somebody who has an extra one laying around in their basement. Okay. Also, in addition to that, they've got these magic shots, which the photo pass photographer will line you up against the wall. They take a picture of you. Then, when you see it pop up on your app, it's you standing with a character or something. I did the one with IG-12, which is the upgraded version of IG-11 that Grogu can drive around like a mech that we saw in The Mandalorian. I honestly was kind of delighted by that,
Yeah,
which
it
I'm
was
not a
fun.
big fan of these magic shots in general.
Yeah.
To me, it's just like photoshopping in a character or whatever. But that was fun. Apparently, there's also BB-8 and BD-72, who is the BD droid that Peli Motto has in the Mandoverse.
Right.
Dick, do you like the magic shots?
They're fun. I mean, it's just a fun thing to mix up with the PhotoPass photographers. Give them
Yeah.
one more thing to do. I also got one with Salacious Crumb the other day
Okay. Where's
by
that
the
located?
by the popcorn stand.
Okay. Interesting. So that's fun. You can go and find those around the park. I think mostly centralized around Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
And then PhotoPass Lens. I think this is comes with your, if you get Genie Plus, if you pay for Genie
Right.
Plus that day. There's a PhotoPass Lens where you can customize your own Mandalorian helmet and armor. I have not played around with that. Do you know much about that one, Nick?
I know they repurpose them sometimes because they
Yeah.
did one to promote the release of Star Cruiser where you could choose your species and your background and all that kind of thing. Like you could have Leku as a Twi'lek, and that was a fun one. And then they put that into the Genie Plus rotation. So I think it's just like, which ones do they want to dust off? I haven't tried this Mandalorian one though. I'm curious how deep the customization options
Yeah.
go.
Me too. Me too. Okay, so then over in downtown Disney, now I saw you taking some photos with this. I've taken a couple photos with the Young Jedi Adventures photo op. This is more of a marketing thing, but
Yeah.
it's still fun.
Oh,
It's always
fun.
fun when they have these kind of standee photo op installations there and outside the Star Wars trading post at downtown Disney. I liked what you did with Nubs handing you the Sith Wayfinder.
That's right. That was,
Um,
hey, he's cute, but you never know with these kids. They're still learning. They're still learning the ways of the Force.
Right. Right. You never know which path they might go down.
That's
Let's
right.
talk about some of the food that's available during Star Wars month. There's the blue and red lightsaber churros. Over in Galaxy's Edge at Docking Bay 7, you can get Temple root leaf and moss salad. There's Darth Bite chocolate parfait in Tomorrowland. Jumping back to Galaxy's Edge at Sokka's Kettle, there's new flavors of popcorn there. Surabat Valley Mix and Niamos Mix. Now, Niamos is a reference to Andor. That's like the vacation planet that he goes
Right.
to, right? There's also a jelly fruit muffin at Katsaka's Kettle. There's Tenu Swirl Crunchy Cereal at the Milk Stand. Five Blossom Bread at Oga's Cantina. Galma Garlic Puffs you can get at the popcorn stands. I think the little drink kiosks over there. There's a Grogu Candy Apple at Downtown Disney. I think that's at Marceline's Confectionery. And there's a whole treat cart at the Grand Californian Hotel and Spa at their lobby cart that's all Star Wars themed. Do you have any favorites among this Star Wars food that's available for Star Wars month at Disneyland Resort, Nick?
Yeah, man, the food has been overwhelming. I've been trying a lot of it, but I'm generally sticking kind of vaguely in universe. Maybe
Okay.
not so much the churros,
Right.
which I'm sure are the same that they've always been for Star Wars. Night and all that kind of thing. But I really like the new salad at Docking Bay 7. It's fantastic.
Oh, great.
And you can order it with or without the egg to be vegan. There's two objects you mentioned in that list which are direct ties into the Young Jedi Adventures show: the jelly fruit muffin and the Tenu swirl
Okay.
blue milk, which is blue milk with nerds in it. And they're both pretty darn good, I gotta say, and it's good if you're hyped on the show as I am to kind of have a few fun tongue-in-cheek. This to me is like these are things that would have been at a fast food joint, during Phantom Menace when they
Right.
had all the weird stuff for that. But yeah, all of the kind of new food offerings to me, I hope are auditions for things that are coming, because for past seasonal events you've had things that would show up at Oga's or elsewhere that would become permanent fixtures on the
Yeah.
menu, not seasonally. So I hope the salad sticks around. And it's interesting, some of them are quite frankly downgrades in my opinion from previous offerings. Like I will say the pretzel bread at Oga's,
Okay.
they're like with a new honey mustard dip, and I'm like, all that you're telling me is you've taken the cheese away. And it's like, so I'm over here just hoping the cheese comes back, because that pretzel bread with the cheese dip in Oga's, it doesn't sound great. It is unbelievably delicious.
Okay.
And it's so well done. So that's one where it's like I prefer new things rather than slight variations on old things. And thankfully, between Star Wars Month and the event Star Wars Night, the number of new food things to taste is just through the stratosphere.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And we're going to get into the Star Wars night food in a bit here. But speaking of new things that are variations on old things, there's this new sipper that's called the Acid Spitter Orb Sipper. And when I saw there was a new sipper at Galaxy's Edge, I was like, oh, I got to get me one of them. But then I saw it's just, is it the same mold as the Jabba one that they had a couple of years ago?
I will say I initially had the same reaction you did, which is they're recoloring the Jabba sipper, the Patty Frog sipper.
Yes.
And I said, I don't need that. But then I saw them post the full article where they showed the inside, and the creature is different. So it's an acid spitter, which is a reference to the Tales from the Galaxy's Edge VR game. So because it's a reference to that, and it is a different creature inside, I did buy it.
How about the droid parts popcorn bucket? Did you get one of those?
I did not. I'm not huge on the popcorn buckets. I mean, if there was like a really in-universe sort of prop thing that they did for one, I will say it being the exact same scale as the version of the droids in the Droid Depot is kind of funny. I get why people would want them, but you know, I'm not a completist. I don't need to have every single thing.
I did buy that one, and almost because of the reason that you just listed there, it's a much cheaper way, because I've never built the droid in Galaxy's Edge. This is a much cheaper way to just have one of those sitting on my shelf, and it's like multicolored parts,
and it lights up, I think, right?
I have not tried to light it up. I think it's still in my backpack from when I bought it last week. Okay, let's get into going with the sippers real quick. There's a Grogu sipper in Tomorrowland. It's Grogu holding the bowl, and he's got a little frog in the bowl. If you're into Grogu, that's another good one to get.
If you want to sip out of Grogu's head.
Right. Let's answer Hope's question here real quick. What year did Star Wars Weekends come out down at Walt Disney World? Do you know what year that would have been, Nick?
That's a good question. So it was prequel era. I'm just trying to think if it was roundabouts 2006, I think.
Okay, that sounds right to me.
It could have been earlier. I might be completely off base here, but that was when I kind of became aware of Star Wars Weekends and kind of all that entails.
I know it ended was like 2015, so probably around the period that the sequels movies started coming out. Season of the Force also included 2.0 update of the Jedi Training Academy, right? Would that have been the Seventh Sister who was the...
Yes, I loved that show. Honestly, like it's one of those things that you think, oh, cute kids training show. The writing was surprisingly emotional. Like I always got a little verklempt watching that show. I kind of miss it. You know, I feel like that kind of thing, you know, doesn't necessarily at the present moment have a place in Galaxy's Edge, but there's no reason you can't do that in Tomorrowland. And especially, you know, the costumes from that were sort of, the design was reused for the Jedi Temple Challenge YouTube game show. And, you know, why not do a Keller and Beck adjacent thing? You know, that doesn't fit in the Galaxy's Edge timeline, but it would be so wonderful to have that elsewhere.
Yeah, definitely agreed. Let's get into some of the big ticket items that became available at Doc Ondar's Den of Antiquities for May the 4th. And some of them I know are still there. Although the biggest one, the Cal Kestis Legacy lightsaber, pretty sure that's sold out pretty quickly. But there was this long line. I think it wound all the way down past the marketplace area on May the 4th. Did you pick any of this stuff up, Nick? I know you got the Wayfinder.
I got, well, and I, you know, even though it came out a few days after, I consider Ellie the fairy to be of that merchandise that was supposed to come out right then. So of course I picked up a couple of her, because it's just been, I was counting the days, literally 344 days since they announced that plush was coming out. And the Wayfinder was an interesting experience because, again, as we have talked at length in my previous appearance on your show, I struggle emotionally to this day reconciling what occurs in the Rise of Skywalker film. But, you know, there's also some things that I enjoy about it. And so I kind of just made a pact with myself that I would never buy any merchandise from that film. It's just an easy way to save money. But when I saw that it was a de facto new holocron in a way, even though it's not a holocron, you know, the fact that it interacted with all of the old kyber crystals, but had new sound clips with fun facts from across the Star Wars galaxy. And I just love maps and cartography and all that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet and buy this as its own product. Because look, I took a long time to collect all the variations of kyber crystal that has every different character voice in it. So I thought I got to get this. Now, I bit the bullet and I bought it, and it was not. No one knew at this time that it was a blind box,
Right.
where there are two different colorways of Wayfinder, and sadly, one of them is much more beautiful than the other. And it's hard. Look, when the two options of your blind box are beautifully aged stone and bird poop, the options are extremely. You really want to get one, and you really don't want to get the other.
Right.
So when it came out that someone said they're blind boxes, but not really, some of them have a little red dot on them that tell you that they're the stone one. I said, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet, because with your annual pass discount, it's $10 off.
Yeah.
It's pretty reasonably priced. So I do currently have both versions.
You ended up getting the other one.
Yeah, here,
I'm glad.
I'll show you.
So how did you ensure that you came by the proper version of that? Was that just luck of the draw again?
Now, I cannot necessarily say that this will always be true, but someone on Discord noticed that if you look at the top of the lid, because it comes in a beautiful plastic box, this giant plastic box that's really wonderfully done, there is a dot in the corner that I don't know if I can show you this, but there's a little white dot there.
I see it,
that not all of them have it, but that generally, the white dot indicates that it's the white one. And then on the black version that you see here, there will be a red marker dot on top of that. And so you can kind of see it through the tape. And I just kind of shined my phone light on it until I found one. And now that might not be true for every batch. They might catch on that people are realizing this, and that one of them is just extremely more desirable than the other, just from purely aesthetic reasons, because they're virtually identical in terms of function. Like if you scan a kyber crystal, you're going to get the same kind of generic Sith voice on both, telling you about something, a location in the galaxy, like Naboo is a beautiful green planet. It gives you a series of 2 or 3 fun facts about that, important things that happen to the Sith.
That's like, you ever see on the Dana Carvey show the Germans saying nice things sketch?
Sometimes it feels that way. Like, honestly, and I tweeted about this, but just hearing a Sith voice talk about Octo and say fluffy porgs filled with creatures, this is such a fun and really deep lore from the High Republic comics, from the Rise of Kylo Ren comics. Like, they're dropping facts from all over.
Okay.
And this is I really recommend this, and just pretend it's not from Rise of Skywalker.
Okay, so I had a similar experience to you. Now, I, as a rule, don't buy sequel trilogy merchandise, not because I dislike the trilogy as a whole, but just, again, like you said, to limit myself from, because my apartment is just filled with stuff already. So I tend to stick to mostly original trilogy era, but I'm also a sucker for in-universe prop replicas, ostensibly prop replica. I've seen the Sith Wayfinder prop in person. I went to a presentation on the Lucasfilm archives at the Walt Disney Family Museum a year or 2 ago, and I got to see that up close. So I was like, oh, this is kind of a pretty cool thing to own, even though I'm not the world's biggest Rise of Skywalker fan. So I have bought it as well. Now, I have not opened mine because I just haven't had time. So it's sitting in the other room. I don't know if it has this dot on it or not.
Would you like to go check, and I can entertain the audience while you go get it?
Sure. Yeah. You can talk about whatever you like.
I think the sheer excitement of you opening it will be worth the delay.
Okay. Here we go. I'll be right back.
Now, as I previously mentioned, the function of these is virtually identical. When you scan a Kyber, you'll get the facts from the planet that Kyber had a major event occur. Like if you scan the Qui-Gon one, it has Naboo facts because he showed down with Maul on Naboo. That being said, there is one minor functional difference between these, which is there is no default function. Like, you need a kyber crystal to make this thing work. It doesn't do anything unless you have a kyber crystal. Now, that being said, if you leave it to idle for a little bit, like you leave the power on and it just idles for a little while, on the black one, you will hear Darth Vader's breathing. And on the white one, you will hear Palpatine's iconic laugh. That kind of thing. So if you do have a particular Vader Palpatine predilection, there's no other reason that these, there's not this all Darth Vader voice, or this is all this. Now they have the same generic voice throughout the scanning of the kyber crystals, but that idle little Easter egg is different on each of them. So that's kind of a fun little thing that they added.
That is fun. Nick, what am I looking for here?
So underneath the tape,
Okay, so I have to
And
remove the
now,
tape.
now there are 2 dots on either corner, so it could be on either one of them from what I've seen other people post.
And
So
you
you
were
can
able to
remove.
see through the tape when you looked with your
Yes, yeah, I
flashlight.
was able to see through the tape. So if you just shine, if you have a light that you can shine and see the divot, you'll see that it's either blank, which is, that's the difficult thing. Oh, you're opening it. Okay, we're doing this. It
I'm
doesn't
just gonna
matter what the
open it.
dot is.
And if I get the wrong one, I'll probably just go and hunt for the.
Yeah, I'm sure, and you could probably find someone to trade, or who
Yeah.
knows. Oh, this is a live unboxing. This is very exciting. This is YouTube loves live unboxing.
And it's gonna work so well in the audio version of this podcast too.
Absolutely. I can describe it. He's taking off the 2 long strips of tape. You can hear it, very ASMR.
Okay, so I've got a white dot. I can see the dot here, and I'm looking for the red one. Is good or bad?
The red one will indicate the black one. As I just dropped it, it will indicate the black one. Now there are on. Oh, I believe you have the Darth Vader edition.
Okay. So I got to hunt for the black one.
It actually on camera, it doesn't look that bad. It's just in person that let's just say the weathering is not as detailed as the black one.
Okay. Well, that's cool to know. That's very good information out there for people who are looking to get.
Oh, and I misspoke. That one has the Palpatine laugh on it.
Okay, cool. Well, it is a very cool item either way, I think. Now, you called this the bird poop edition, though, right?
That is, yeah. I mean, it's just, I can't think of any other way to more accurately describe what it looks like.
Fair enough. What about the other stuff that came out at Docks? I know there's a new lightsaber stand and a kyber crystal display. Did you get to play with any of that?
I did buy that one. It is so heavy. It's solid metal. Like, people weren't realizing, why is this thing $50? It's a solid hunk of metal that lights up and it's well done. I was surprised. Like, I kind of bought it on a lark thinking, oh, this is interesting. And I have my one Savi's lightsaber that I've kind of customized from the different themes of Savi's to be my ideal. And I thought it'd be nice to have something to put that on.
Gotcha. I'm thinking like, I'm gonna go back to Docks and get out my flashlight. It'll be like the early days looking for the black kyber crystal before they started putting those papers in there.
Man,
anyway,
it took me a while to get that. I'm not even going to tell you the number. The number of reds I had to pull to get a black was embarrassingly high.
I am rarely a lucky person, but I got extremely lucky, and the first red kyber crystal I ever bought, sight unseen, didn't look through anything. It was black, so I got super lucky with that.
The Force was with you, and Snoke was with you.
Snoke was with me. Let's talk about Star Wars Nite. So this is Disneyland After Dark Star Wars Nite. It's an after-hours ticketed event that takes place after regular operating hours at Disneyland. But before we get into that specifically, Nick, what is your experience with Disneyland After Dark as a series of events? What are your thoughts on the way this event is operated? Any favorite or least favorite aspects that you have of this event?
It's been a real roller coaster with these events. Some of them have been more enticing than others in terms of the offerings. I remember a couple years back, they did an 80s night, or was it 90s night? I can't remember, but they brought back the whole, what was it? The video, what's the name of it? The video dance party. Videopolis. That was pretty darn awesome. Like, there was just some unique deep cuts and stuff like that. But I will say, in general, across the board, these events can be really rough if you're not ready for them. There's not enough offerings to absorb the number of people who are there. Because they're running a lot of the rides, but like, people kind of don't want to ride the rides. They're there for the specialty stuff, and there's just not enough of it. That being said, I will say there have been a few unique, interesting ones. It's hard to say that for a 4-hour event, it's worth standing in line 2.5 hours for one character. That's a hard deal to make.
I will say, if you want to hear me go on and on about Star Wars, so about Disneyland After Dark in general, I actually just recently recorded an appearance on my friend Jeff DePauli's podcast, Disney Coast to Coast, where we talked all about Disneyland After Dark. And that one specifically, we expanded upon Throwback Night, which had been the most recent one at that point.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I have a very complicated relationship with these. I've covered almost all of them for Laughing Place. I think the only one I actually missed was 80s Night. Unfortunately, I was sick
Mm,
that week.
right.
And yeah, it's such a difficult thing for me to cover, both, just as like a theme park journalist or whatever you want to
Right.
call me. But
Right.
it is also tough, watching other guests experience this event, because I know many people have gone to these, and like you said, there's just too much to do and not enough time to do it in. The lines for the characters end up being really, really lengthy and tough to get through. Um, but yeah, I feel like I have mixed feelings about these events. Although, as you know, if I were just a regular paying guest, the one that would appeal to me the most would be the Star Wars one, and that's probably the one that I would be most likely to attend as a paying guest. But
Yeah.
how would you describe Star Wars Night to someone who hasn't actually experienced this before?
I would say Star Wars Night is a celebration of Star Wars that spills out from the traditional areas of the park that you would anticipate Star Wars to be
Yeah,
celebrated within Disneyland. So you'll have characters and photo ops and music throughout the entire park in different little corners here and there, which can be a really fun sort of way to mix things up. And if you're there for Star Wars, as many people often are,
yeah,
you're jetting it either to Galaxy's Edge or Tomorrowland. And for this, it's also just fun for me to go knowing you're going to meet fans from all different levels of fandom. Like, you and I can get pretty in the weeds with this stuff, but
yeah,
it's fun to talk to people who aren't as in the weeds as we are. I love hearing about what types of things they love. I'll admit, I went to Star Wars Night twice this year because I know myself. I was very disappointed in previous year's offerings in terms of how much I was able to get done. So I thought, let me take the pressure off myself. I'm going to go twice. I have friends who went all 4 times just because they thought, let me maximize my opportunities here. And I will say, even just having gone the one time, I think this year's was a marked improvement over previous
okay,
years in terms of the amount of stuff, the surprise characters that came out. The lines did in general seem shorter. Now, that being said, there is always one breakout character that commands a 2 or 3 hour long line. And I knew that going in. And so if you have the experience of having studied and done these things, you can plan to have a great time, which is to say, if the party starts at 9, and look, there is no way that the West Coast debut of Queen Amidala is not going to be the breakout hit. You can get in line before the party starts. And so
yeah,
that's what I did. But even having done that, like having waited in line 2 hours before the party started, I had to wait almost another hour to get to her.
yeah,
So it is just a losing predicament in most situations. But that being said, outside of that, there were a lot more little things here and there, and not everyone was treated as a strict photo op. Some of them were distanced so you could see them. Some of them were like Zam Wessel was just walking around Adventureland, which I thought was
right,
a great way to do that character. And so they're getting more creative with these things, and they are doing more offerings. But that being said, they could. I have a toxic relationship with this. I have a codependent relationship with this event, which is I will go no matter what because
right,
there's always some surprise thing that makes me think that made the whole thing worth it. Last year, it was Rey's speech at the lightsaber meetup. And
yeah,
this year, the live entertainment was off the charts. They did a whole confrontation between the
yeah,
First Order and the Resistance. And honestly, it was a little glimpse of the live shows that we were supposed to have every single day in Galaxy's Edge. And so some people can use that as a criticism of Star Wars Night. And it is. Look, saying this was supposed to be in Galaxy's Edge
yeah,
every day. And now I'm paying $100 and something to do it. And I'm just over here saying, you're totally right. However, if you give me an opportunity to pay for it, I just want to see it. Yes, would it be great if it was in Galaxy's Edge
yeah,
every night? Yes, of course. There are stages all over that land for a reason. They physically built it in order to do this. But look, I'm a pragmatist when it comes to this. If the only way I can see it is to pay 100 something bucks, I'm paying 100 something bucks.
right. Uh, yeah, I totally get you. And I guess along the same lines of what you're talking about, and on paper, in the marketing, and you know, in general knowledge of somebody looking at, okay, Star Wars Night is coming up. Why do I want to go to this? The appeal, or a big part of the appeal of something like this, is the rare characters that are coming out and the photo ops, right? Like those would be the two things that you would say
Well,
this is
and
why people are paying to go to Star Wars Night at Disneyland.
completely. There's another angle that we need to mention, which is for the people who like to wear costumes, you're not
Yeah,
allowed to wear them normal nights. And
right.
this represents your opportunity to get photos in
Yeah.
Galaxy's Edge and elsewhere in your costume. So that's I think that's also a big part of the ticket.
So you like, I know Halloween, you have the Oogie Boogie Bash. Now, I used to have the,
Right.
what was it called at Disneyland when they did it over there? It wasn't Mickey's Not So Scary, because that's at Walt Disney
I
World.
think
We
it was
had
just Mickey's Halloween party.
Mickey's Halloween Party. Yeah. So those would be an opportunity for guests to wear costumes. And then at Disneyland After Dark, they do make the exception there as well. So that's a wonderful aspect of these events as well. But by and large, the draw is the characters and the photo ops. Some of the characters, I'll just list off some of the characters that were available at this year's Star Wars Night. You had R2D2. This is a good opportunity to talk about this, actually, because R2D2, Luke, and Leia were outside of the Star Wars launch bay building in that little kind of underhang area there. And that was not a traditional photo op or character meet and greet like what you experience with Queen Amidala. So instead of people waiting in a long line to go up and, have a few minutes to talk with, and that's probably the reason why the line moves so slowly, is because people are taking their time, and it's a great, one-on-one meet and greet with the character. Then you get your photo with them. They weren't doing that with Luke, Leia, and R2. Instead, they were just kind of having the line flow past them, and people could briefly stop, take a quick selfie, but it wasn't the traditional kind of character meet and greet. Do you think this is a good way to approach this to make the lines go faster, or is there like a happy medium between doing it those two ways?
It's interesting. I think they should continue to do both versions of this on a case-by-case basis. I will say this. Amidala probably could have been a distanced one. And I will say, if you get down to, because look, you're right. People are going to want to have a quick dialogue interaction with these characters, and they'll get their picture. That's part of this. Like, there's an urge when you're standing in line for 2 hours to say, get your picture and move on. But it's like, look, realistically, the interaction is part of it. And I think if there is a character who they have had time to train to have those really good dialogue interactions, have those be the ones you wait in line for. And I will just say that, look, the Queen Amidala was great, but she was not given the level of training you have for a Galaxy's Edge character that has, things to say. Or even, let's go to another throwback night, Mother and Father Progress from Carousel of Progress. They had bits, they had jokes, they had punchlines, they had callbacks. They were ready. They had fully kind of prepared for that thing. And maybe that's down to the individual performers. I don't know how those decisions are made. But I think for those where it's like, look, this is mostly about the picture, I think the walk by is perfectly fine for that. And why not? Let's do a variety. And let's have them all. They also did that with, we haven't gotten there yet, but some of the other ones were also like that.
So you had R2D2, Luke, and Leia, basically like a walkthrough experience. Pass by and wave at them. You can exchange a few comments with them, but that was about it. Then you had Darth Vader and Darth Maul at the Tomorrowland Terrace, or Galactic Grill, as they call the restaurant portion. But that was operated basically the same way. So you just kind of walk past. They were wandering back and forth on the stage. You could grab a quick selfie with them and move along. And then over in Critter Country, there was an Ewok. Some people told me there were multiple Ewoks at a certain point. When I went over there, there was only one Ewok. There was a Jawa with R5D4. You could venture back into Galaxy's Edge and meet Kylo Ren. When I saw Kylo Ren, he was hanging out on the rooftop, kind of like peering down. So that was an interesting, like, different way to spot him. BB-8 was over there as well. You had Rey, Vi Marati, Chewbacca. C-3PO was a very rare character to see in the parks. He was out there. He had kind of a wardrobe malfunction when I went over to see him. You saw me waiting for him to come out, and then when he finally did come out, I think part of his leg was not staying on, so he walked out, then had to keep walking backstage, and eventually they just canceled.
That is an authentic on-set Anthony Daniels experience.
Right. This is what it was like working with C-3PO in the movies. Back in Tomorrowland, Emperor Palpatine and he had two Imperial guards kind of flanking him on the balcony of the Star Wars Launch Bay building. Throughout the park, you also had Chopper, you had Queen Amidala, who you mentioned. Now, she was joined by Anakin Skywalker. Now, you didn't get Skywalker when you were there, right?
I did.
He did. Okay.
He debuted right when I was 2 people away from the front of the line. Now, he didn't actually join her. He was working the line. So
Oh,
he would like work the line, kind of talk to people. He went right up to this little girl dressed as Leia and had a moment with her. So he was more, I loved it. It was sort of like he was helping the logistics of working. Okay, now you could go see the queen, that kind of thing. It was well done. I mean, that's probably the right way to do it because they don't want to have 2 different eras represented in the
yeah,
official picture that you have taken. But for
right.
the night, it's like, look, you've got characters from all over. This is hyperspace hoopla. You want to have everyone from every era walking around, and that's the point. Is you have Galaxy's
Yeah,
Edge, and then you have everything else. That's
yeah.
how it should be.
And looking it through that perspective, I think it was definitely a success because you also had Ezra Bridger and Sabine Wren from Star Wars Rebels, in addition to Captain Rex from the Clone Wars and Rebels, the Seventh Sister, Zam Wessel, who you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
and Mandalorian and Grogu, who you
Yes, walking around.
resent being in Galaxy's Edge. But
Well, I'm glad people are happy, but it's certainly not. It's not my dream come true. Let's say
right,
that. I
fair,
think they
fair
can be.
enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Photo ops without characters. You had the thrones. There were 3 thrones. Boba
Right.
Fett's throne from Book of Boba Fett, Emperor Palpatine's throne from Return of the Jedi, and Bo-Katan Kryze's throne from The Mandalorian. I think this is the first time they had the Bo-Katan throne anywhere that I know of. So that was the
I
highlight of
haven't
those for
seen it.
me.
Yeah,
Um,
no,
I-
absolutely. They just, in my mind, some of these ones, like the Thrones and particularly the meet and greets on Main Street, they need to work on the lighting a little bit better.
okay.
The lighting that they have is kind of just the regular park light, and it's just a little bit
Yeah.
harsh. And I
Fair enough.
think that they could have some pop-up lights that would help these photos be a little bit more worth the 2-hour wait or whatever. If you're waiting for Captain Rex,
Yeah.
you want a better photo, and they just don't come out. And that's something I think that as the years go on, they could try and improve.
Okay, hopefully they will work on improving the lighting.
Yeah.
There was also a Rebel base, I think, by the Matterhorn. There was a statue of K2SO in front of a Jakku backdrop over by the Fantasyland Theater. We were trying to determine, I asked you actually where that K2SO statue might have come from, if it was the one from the Void, and you suggested it might have been one of the promo ones that was
Yeah.
floating around out
And
there.
honestly, they have so many of those things. Those are
Yeah,
great things that don't require a performer to do.
yeah.
You throw them all over the park. It's funny though, having gone twice, once by myself and once with my wife, I didn't even go to that corner of the park. I never saw those.
Okay.
So
Fair
there
enough.
was still stuff I just didn't have time to see.
Yeah. Now is this happening again, or are we at have we passed all of them? Because I know there were like 4 scheduled, right?
I believe tonight is the final one.
Tonight's the final one. All right, great.
Yeah.
So you can listen to this episode on your drive to the park if you're going to this final night of Star Wars Nights. There was a Mythosaur skull over on the Big Thunder Trail. In addition to, it was like a Star Wars themed, like in-universe door that had the sign, the logo of Star Wars Night above it. So that was an interesting one. They had a Jabba the Hutt and a Han and Carbonite in the queue, like the extended queue, interior queue of Star Tours in Tomorrowland. There was a couple
I saw
speeder
in
bikes.
that one, by the way, the Jabba.
Yeah.
A Gamorrean guard came out.
What? Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
know about this.
When I was in line for that, behind, between the 2 photo ops, they had a Gamorrean guard holding court. I got a little bit of video of him, but
I did
was
not know
just like,
about this at all. Yeah.
this
Huh,
is what I'm
that's
saying is those
yeah.
little surprise
Right.
side characters just popping up. That's part of the magic of this event. And one of the things where it's like, I kind of can't miss it because you just want to see those rare ones that never come out.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't know about the Gaborian card. That's pretty great. And then also there was a speeder bike photo op that they've used before. That was over by the Winnie the Pooh attraction in Critter Country. Let's talk about the entertainment. So you already talked about the lightsaber meetup, which is pretty much a show
Yeah.
at this point. Because
It's a
yeah, like you
full-on show.
said, last year it was just a speech by Ray. Now they've expanded it. What did you like about what they did with it this
Let me
year?
tell you though, the word got out on this,
Yeah.
and they did 3 each night. They're gonna need to expand it because
Yeah.
the first night when no one knew, and I kind of knew at least Ray was giving a speech.
Right.
I got there for the, not the first one, but maybe the second one and the third one. And that third one, there was not that many people watching it. Like it was pretty chill. And so I thought when my wife and I went, oh, we'll go get a drink, try the new beverage and food at Oga's, and then we'll go watch the thing. And we exit Oga's, and the people are out past Oga's. Like, not only is the lightsaber meetup full, there are people trying to push their way in all the way around to the TIE fighter. Like, the word on that show got out, and they're
Nice.
going to need to, expand accordingly for future years, because yeah, it is the coolest thing at the event. It's a whole darn conflict. It's fantastic.
Pretty neat. Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit myself. And like you said earlier, I would like to see more of that kind of stuff in Galaxy's Edge. We also had the Celebrate the Night Star Wars fireworks. I'm not a huge fireworks guy. To me, I could
Me
take them or
neither.
leave them.
Yeah.
Have you watched this? Do you enjoy the Star Wars Night fireworks?
We didn't necessarily make it a point to, but we just randomly found in our schedule that, oh, the
Yeah.
fireworks are about to start. We had just talked to Zam, and we saw a little opening right, by the entrance, and we could see the castle right there. So we watched it and left. It's quaint. It's
Yeah.
interesting. It's certainly, I feel like they could add some projections in and maybe, reimagine it. But like you said, I'm not the right audience for this. I'm not a big fireworks guy. I never have been.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm glad for people who need that as part of their anchoring thing. I think if I know they have trouble making it later in the night, but when the party starts at 9 and the fireworks are at 9:30, a lot of people are in lines at that time.
Right. Yeah. For me, covering it, that first hour basically gets spent, waiting for the fireworks and then,
Yeah.
enjoying the fireworks and recording video of it. We also got Figure and Dan and the Modal Nodes back. Now, in previous years, or was this last year when they
It
had
was
them
last year only. Yeah.
on the raft in Rivers of America, kind of in front of Tom Sawyer Island there. Now, this year they moved them up on the balcony above the Golden Horseshoe Saloon, with the
Yeah.
sign in the appropriate uh, right side up fashion. Did you get to catch these guys?
I did, and man, they need to put them back on the raft.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where when you walk by it and it's happening, it's super cool. But when you have a bunch of people
Right.
standing, waiting for it to happen, and then they come out, like, they've given them a little bit of choreography, but it's like 5 dudes pretending to play instruments. Like, there's not a lot happening.
And they only do
So
the one song. So
I think right. I think it's good as streetmosphere. So the two things I would say is
yeah.
put them back on the raft and or off somewhere. Maybe just have them on the island. Like, they don't even need to be on the raft. Just have them
Right.
distance on the island, and then give them that second Modal Node song from DJ Rex.
Yeah.
Let him do that one as well. Let him mix it up a little bit.
Or even Cantina Band number 2.
Yeah, right.
From the original score. Yeah, that
For
would
sure.
be fine. And then we had Lightsaber Masters, which is basically lightsaber training. I haven't participated in that, but it's fun to watch. They have 2 kind of swords people. What are your thoughts on this, Nick? You look very thoughtful about this.
I didn't actually go this year.
Okay.
I didn't. I need to go watch some people's videos to see if they did anything different. But I will say, I don't remember what year it is, but the Star Wars night that they did after The Last Jedi, I went dressed as Broom Boy.
Okay.
From The Last Jedi.
Nice.
So I went to lightsaber training as Broom Boy using my broom instead of a lightsaber.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I love it.
And it's like, it was one of those things where it's kind of a thinker. And you'd have people like, what is this guy doing? Like, even though I replicated the broom, it was a Star Wars broom. It was not just a broom.
Great.
But when they got it, they were delighted. When it finally clicked for them. Yeah, that was.
I love it.
Fun.
That's a great idea. Then they did March of the First Order with Captain Phasma and the First Order Stormtroopers. Not in Galaxy's Edge. Now, she wouldn't actually fit in Galaxy's Edge because she's dead between episodes 8 and 9.
Is she though? She fell into a fireball.
Right.
In Star Wars with a bunch of armor on. To me, that doesn't mean you're dead in Star Wars.
Okay, fair enough. She could.
I think
still
she's going to
be
show up just with one burned eyeball.
Right. But yeah, this is in Tomorrowland again on the launch bay building. They march down from there and then around Tomorrowland. This is something they've done a bunch before. You also had a Galactic DJ hanging out in the hub, I think. And what's Fleet of Fandom? I didn't even encounter this, but is this just like a cosplay march or
right? Yeah. And I don't know how people are selected. I don't know if there's just employees whose specific job it is to identify people, but it is. Yeah. It's like a little parade that they have. Some people they identify in costume and do it. It sounds fun. I've also never seen it.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. I guess if you're dressed up and your costume is nice enough, they'll enlist you in the Fleet of Fandom. Food, I have food allergies. I can't eat a lot of stuff at the parks, and I was looking through the food offerings at Star Wars Night. There was just too much to list on our outline here. But did you have any favorites from the food at Star Wars Night that stuck out to you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We tried all the Galaxy's Edge stuff. So there was two new dishes at Docking Bay 7. There was a noodle dish, which was sort of fettuccine alfredo with lima beans and ham.
Yeah.
That was pretty standard. The chicken was very good. It was like almost like a fried pressed chicken, almost like a katsu type thing, and that was surprisingly good. Like I kind of ordered that on a lark, thinking I'll just take a few bites, but we ended up finishing it. So that to me, you could almost bring that one back. There was a fantastic, again, all over the park, tons of new food items,
Yeah.
and the ones that kind of jumped out to us, they had I believe it was also there was a couple also named after Andor. Like they had just given them Andor sort of names.
Okay.
I can't off the top of my head remember the exact references, but there was a rice porridge with pork at the Harbor Galley, which we were just going to get some coffee and we ordered one on a lark, and it ended up being one of the great things that night. Like,
Now, was this supposed to be like the liquid food they were drinking in the prison and Andor?
no, I don't
Okay.
think so. I don't think so. Like it almost just feels like they've kind of called, because there was also a pork slider at Ronto Roasters that also had I wish I could remember an Andor themed name. So it's
Yeah.
almost like they've given pork to Andor, and I don't know why.
Fair enough. Fair
But
enough.
the one that for me was the big winner was there's a roll, like a sushi style roll, rice roll in Oga's, that has like spam pate in it, which does not sound super appetizing, but it was phenomenally well done. And I, even if it's not this specific roll, I really, really hope that there is some kind of rice roll at Oga's moving forward, because it was fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, those are good recommendations. Again, I have a very limited diet that I can eat at the parks, but when they do have
Right.
gluten-free stuff, I like to try it out. But yeah, that sounds good what you listed there. And I think as far as event-specific merch, as far as I'm aware, there was only a T-shirt this year. Do you know of anything else that would have come out? Was there a pin or anything for Star Wars Night this year?
I didn't even go look at the merch,
Okay.
because I've kind of given up on the merch. One, because I don't necessarily want anything with the logo of Star Wars Night
Yeah.
on it. Maybe if the Star Wars Night logo was an inspiring one,
Right.
it's just kind of a basic text
Yeah.
thing. There's
That's
not a
fair.
lot going on. But when we did Throwback Night, I happened to look, and they on the flyer they had buy the shirt with the logo. They didn't even have it. Like the one piece of merch they
Right.
advertised was not there.
Okay.
So I couldn't even
Is
tell
this
you
a
what
supply
actually
chain
came out.
issue again,
I,
or
I don't know. I
okay?
don't know.
That must be why Ellie, the Theory, did not show up
I have to assume
for the
so.
fourth as well. Okay, here's the big question as we start to wrap up this conversation. How would you, if you were in charge, how would you change this event for the better? I think we both have notes about how this could be operated better, but do you
Yeah.
have anything specific that you would say that you would like to see implemented in the future for Star Wars Night?
Absolutely. There's a couple really specific things, but I want to give credit to the ops team, because it does seem like they're getting better,
Yeah.
even from night to night. Like I saw them giving, when I was waiting in line for Padme, when they knew the line had reached a length where it was like, look, this is unreasonable, they gave everyone past that a wristband and said, come back after this time and
Oh,
you can get
yeah.
back in line. Like the idea of giving people wristbands and letting them go enjoy the party and then come back later, this is a good idea. I feel like there might be a future where we could do some kind of digital reservations for some of the meet and greets, virtual queue type situations. As long as you do that in addition to a line where people can feel like they're not necessarily going to miss out if they have one character that they must see. I think there's a lot of room, and they are making incremental improvements, and I think they will continue to do that. The big ones for me are like specific in the terms of the ambiance of the thing. Like I love the walk around characters, and there's these fun little surprises. I'm sure they'll do more of those. That's the lifeblood of these events. But like when you first enter the park, they've placed the DJ in the hub,
Yeah.
and he's playing some Star Wars music, some non-Star Wars music. The hub to me does not scream dance party. It's more of a traversal space. And I think I would personally rather just hear some Star Wars loops
Mm,
in that area. And if
yeah.
you'd like to have a dance party, put it in some of the other areas we have seen dance parties occur in the park in the past. It's just a struggle when it's like, oh, I'm going to leave the party, and you're hearing, whatever pop song he happens to be playing. It's
Yeah.
just not the egress experience or the
Right.
entrance experience that necessarily, sends you home on that high note of like, man, Star Wars and Disneyland, that's crazy fun. So that's my one big suggestion, and I have made this suggestion on the survey to them before, and so I will continue
Okay.
to make that suggestion.
Great. Yeah, I think those are great suggestions for the future of Star Wars Night. I want to suggest something. So I talked about this on Jeff's podcast, Disney Coast to Coast, when we were talking about Throwback Night and what I would like to see for Disneyland After Dark in the future, and kind of goes along with what you were saying earlier about the expanded version of the lightsaber meetup. How
Mm,
I think we would both love to see more immersive character interactions at this kind of thing. In fact, I
yeah.
think you could make a whole Star Wars night out of doing the type of things that were promised to us for Galaxy's Edge in the very beginning, and just have a I know that um it's called Ghost Town Alive at Knott's
Oh
Berry
yes.
Farm, one of my
Oh yeah.
favorite theme park activities to do over the summer here in Southern California. And I think you could just do that in Galaxy's Edge, and have it be, there you go, Ghost Town Alive. It's coming up this summer again at Knott's Berry Farm, but you could have a ticketed event where you have all those characters out, all the characters who should belong, who should, exist during that time period in Black Spire Outpost on Batu, and have the story play out over however many hours you want to
Yeah.
have it, and have the interactions. I think that would be wonderful. I think
Absolutely.
this is a perfect opportunity to do something like that. Do you think that would work, Nick, as a Star Wars Night, Disneyland After Dark type of
Yeah,
event?
it would be phenomenal. I almost wonder if you would have to ticket that as its own thing because
Yeah,
I think the demand would be so high. But it's
right.
also one of those things where, like some of the other surprises, you might not need to advertise it and just let people stumble into it. Let them
Yeah,
discover it. Let them say, wow, there's this thing going on, and characters are telling me to come back at this certain time because we're going to do this certain thing.
yeah,
Like, let it be an organic process. I think that would be absolutely wonderful. And honestly, even if that's not possible, the other thing that came into my mind is my other little soapbox is, I loved the data pad with all the missions that you can run on the data pad for Galaxy's Edge. And for years now, in the background of the code of the app has been a functionality that they've never turned on, which was for premium missions.
yeah.
And the idea is you would pay $4 or $5 for a much more elaborate version of the missions that you can play for free in Galaxy's Edge. And so they've been designed, they've been built out, it's there. I think they just got cold feet on the idea of upcharging for that. So if you just had it as part of the package, like you go to Star Wars Night
Yeah.
or whatever, and you get the selfie lenses or you get the free photo pass, just send a little thing that says you have a ticket for Star Wars Night. You've unlocked the premium missions for Datapad.
Okay.
I think that would be a great way to utilize content that's already been designed.
Right. Yeah, that's a great idea as well. So that's Star Wars Night. Now, as far as like general Star Wars content in the parks, is there anything that you've been hoping to see implemented that maybe they haven't brought into the parks themselves yet, that are on your wish list?
Other than Launch Bay, obviously we've
Yeah.
gone into that.
Yeah.
The return of Launch Bay, I think, would be a big thing. Obviously, I'm down for anything that they want to bring to Galaxy's Edge to kind of build out some of that original interactive vision. The first one that comes to my mind is they were on deck for 3 other missions on Smuggler's Run, and that to me will be something where that ride will finally fully come into its own, because
Yeah.
I'm a much bigger fan of that ride than most people are, and that was surprising to me. I think that the technology is much more impressive than people realize,
Hmm.
and it's kind of a miracle that it works as well as it does, and the capacity is just through the roof. It's a fantastic people eater. I love the ride, and I think that some level of randomization or even selection of your destination will take it into the stratosphere and make people realize how special that ride system and the interactivity of it really is, because it's a phenomenally well done thing, and
Yeah.
it's not being allowed to shine right now.
Is it surprising to you that we're going to get more Star Tours missions before we're going to get more
It's only not
Smugglers Run
surprising,
missions?
right? It's only not surprising to me because I know it's cheaper.
Okay.
Look, having a specific, it's not cheap. None of it is cheap. It is more affordable. It costs less. Let me just say it like that. Like it costs a lot to render out a 4K stereoscopic, scene,
Yeah.
no matter how short it is. That's an expensive thing to produce.
Fair enough.
But
Yeah.
having a fully interactive rail shooter level that accounts for all the interactivity that a person can do and making sure that it's robust and playable, that's a much bigger ask. than having a curated sort of pre-rendered thing. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't know when it's going to happen. They announced them over a year ago, and they won't be here for presumably more than a year. So who knows what that is? But I'm excited because I love Star Tours, and I'm always excited to see more. I would honestly love a way. Star Tours is completely random. You know, it kind of alternates between the original Adventures Continues stuff and the sequel trilogy stuff. And presumably now there'll be a third clump for Mandoverse stuff.
Right.
But I think that it would be awesome to kind of have like an app-based way to choose, like almost have a voting mechanism.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and you scan in and it's like, I voted in the app, and oh, out of the 50 people on the ride, 10 people voted for this particular thing, and maybe only one of the slots is for that. Like, I obviously I haven't fully built this out, but I feel like that would be a really neat kind of mechanism, especially if you put it behind a gate where it's not just like putting a quarter in a jukebox. You know, it's not like you can annoy people with your choice. You actually have to somehow earn the right to make that destination switch or something like that, and you could kind of build that out in a way that is a different type of interactivity than what you have in something like Galaxy's Edge.
I think that's a great idea. I would be voting for Hoth almost every time, because I think I've only gotten Hoth like 3 times ever.
Oh wow!
So and that's my favorite one. But yeah, would love to see more Star Tours stuff like that. And they have announced more missions coming to Star Tours next year, so that'll be an exciting thing to look forward to. I think that's going to wrap up our discussion of Star Wars month at Disneyland Resort. Thank you, Nick, for joining me for that. And to our final segment here on Who is the Bossk, it's called First Steps into a Larger World. This is where we just talk about the media that we've been consuming and or enjoying outside of Star Wars. My example this week is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the closing chapter of the trilogy by James Gunn in the MCU. I really enjoyed this movie. I think Guardians of the Galaxy, by and large, you know, the 3 films is my favorite trilogy to come out of Marvel Studios as movies. Very funny, very touching, very moving. It is disturbing in parts. As other people have pointed out, there is some animal cruelty in the movie that I would agree it's tough to sit through, but it has a point. It's well executed, and it adds to the character background stuff that this movie is definitely a Rocket Raccoon movie. It's all about his origin story and about his evolution as a character. So I think all that leads to the point that James Gunn is trying to make. And I would recommend this film. How about you, Nick? Anything that you have been enjoying watching, reading, playing lately outside of the Star Wars franchise?
I'm so surprised by your interpretation, because if you just believed the opinions of certain former Imagineers on Twitter who haven't seen the film, James Gunn just hates animals. And this
Wait,
movie,
who was it that said that? I saw this tweet. I don't remember who it was.
I wouldn't want to say his name.
That's
but
fair.
The idea that depiction is endorsement is patently absurd, particularly in a movie like this, where what they're trying to say could not be clearer. A more pro-animal message.
And I should clarify too, none of the animals in the movie are real. They are all created in a computer. So no animals, literally no animals, were harmed in the making of this film, nor were they actually used in the making of this film.
Tomorrow's headline: Mike Celestino doesn't care about digital animal rights.
I don't care about digital animal rights. You can quote me on that.
No, I really enjoyed the film. I like all the Guardians movies. I think the second one is still personally my favorite.
Sure, I like that,
but I need to revisit them. I'm not gonna rank it out without having gone back and rewatched them.
Yeah,
but I really loved it. I think James Gunn's just so talented. I love the Peacemaker show. I think he's a wonderful talent. And I've struggled with a lot of the MCU, and I've never struggled with any of his stuff. So I really like what he's done, and I'm excited for him to do his Superman stuff. I'm a big Superman fan, and I'm curious, which of those personal stamps he'll leave at the door, because I don't necessarily see Superman as a needle drop movie,
right?
And so I'm excited for him to spread his wings.
Pocket full of kryptonite.
Yeah, we'll see how that ends up. But honestly, the man is just so full of heart, and he's such a good writer and a director that I felt like a victory lap. Guardians Volume 3 felt like a huge victory lap that he's absolutely earned. And it's great to see someone going through a bad situation and get into a great one, and
Right.
it's wonderful.
Everyone deserves a second chance. It's a quote right from the film. It's like, oh, he's writing this about himself.
Yeah, Rocket no longer makes inappropriate jokes on Twitter. That's the theme. For my pick for this is going to surprise nobody, and it honestly creates a great bookend for our conversation.
Okay.
Which started all the way back with us talking about Damon Lindelof. Yeah. I just watched the pilot of Mrs. Davis. I haven't dived into the rest, but I loved the pilot. I think it's fantastic. It's kooky. It's got that weird sci-fi / satirical sort of Terry Gilliam flavor to it that I'm just really, really loving. And I'm looking forward to diving into the remaining episodes that are available now and following along with it as they continue to come out. It's a fascinating story, and it seems like the type of myth we need in the age of endless debates about artificial intelligence.
I am very much looking forward to checking this show out. Like I said earlier, I'm a big Lindelof fan. I love Lost. I love The Leftovers. I loved Watchmen that you mentioned before. Where is this available? Where is Mrs. Davis?
This is a Peacock original series.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll check that out on Peacock. Looking forward to that. Big thank you to my guest this week, Nick Tierce. Nick, thank you so much for taking nearly 2 hours out of your busy week to come and chat with me about Star Wars.
We almost did it.
Well, next we've time. Actually the Laughing Place Marvel podcast, the Zacks of Life, who named their podcast after my, the 80s sitcom theme that I established with the Who's the Bossk. They're coming up at 3:00, so we gotta wrap here pretty soon. But thank you, Nick. This was a wonderful conversation, deep dive into Star Wars month at Disneyland. So thanks again.
Absolutely a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Mike. We'll see you at level 3 of the 5 Star Wars.
Level 3. You will be back for level 3. As always, please visit laughingplace.com for all your Disney news and opinions. Next week on Who's the Bossk, I'm trying to do an episode about Young Jedi Adventures. So I think that's going to be the next episode. So look forward to that. My name is Mike Celestino. I'm on Twitter at Who's the Bossk Pod. Thank you so much out there for listening. See you next time. Bye. Thanks, Nick. We're going to end the broadcast here. So thanks, everybody, for watching. Oh, Alexander Lee wanted to know if we've seen the Super Mario Brothers movie. I have not.
No comment.
No comment. Okay, let's end the broadcast.
I don't want to end this